find myself whenever I remember. I have no fear whenever I remember. God is me, and I am God. I am God, and God is me. There's only love whenever I remember. I find such peace whenever I remember. God is me. God is me, and I am God. Yes, I am God, and God is me. There's only one. Whenever I remember, God is love. Whenever I remember, and love is me. Whenever I remember, God. Whenever I remember, God. Whenever I remember, God. Whenever I remember, God.
I am going to ask if not Miss, if the Brannis McKenzie will join me for just a moment here at the podium. Did she already leave the building? Yeah. Did she already sneak out?
Yeah, yeah, I was sneaking out.
You were sneaking out. 14 years ago this week, I had the privilege of being on a world tour with the Brannis McKenzie when she and I took 11 teenagers. We had lost our mind to Shanghai, China. I had produced and directed a play called At the Playground, and it was written by a Chinese woman that lives in North America, and it talked about her immigrant status in the United States and the loneliness that happened. And it won an award, and we got to take it to the International Play Festival in Shanghai. And knowing that I was taking 11 teenagers, I needed an experienced teacher, world traveler, and inspiration, and that was the Brannis McKenzie.
Yes.
But it was the joy of my life to be with you and to share that moment with you whenever I remember.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Brannis McKenzie.
I love you.
So oftentimes in the tradition, And I first realized this at the installation of the Reverend Dr. Andriette Earl when she became a staff minister at East Bay Church of Religious Science in 2004. Iyanla Van Sant was the officiant that evening with the Reverend Dr. Eloise Oliver. And one of the things that Iyanla did at the very first moment is she came to the podium and she asked the elders in the room for permission to speak. And that seemed like such a respectful and genuine and loving thing to do. And I often think that I want to do that, but it's hidden by the fear that there are no elders older than me in the room. And there would be no one to say, go ahead, say what you need to say. So if there are elders in the room, I ask your indulgence and permission to speak, but don't speak up in case I'm the only one. But also because I am the only elder, not the only elder, but one of the elders of Heart and Soul Center of Light, and a 40-year minister in this movement known as Centers for Spirituality. I would not be genuine if I did not come before you all today and say, this is a tough Sunday for a minister to be a minister. And one of the things that I know to be true, and one of the things that, I'm also, I am the chair of Heart and Soul Center of Light, but I'm also the spiritual leader for CSL Visalia and the spiritual director for Elder Pride Incorporated. That's how I retire. But that said, the folks at CSL Visalia reminded me that next Sunday is the International Day of Peace. And Reverend Jack, would you speak on peace? In a time like this. And it's I feel sometimes like that parent whose child is in major, major trouble. That they have done something that may very well have sabotaged the rest of their life and how they are going to experience their life. But as a parent, you still love them. That still is there, and you're still struggling to find your way of how you might be in their life as their parent, empowering them to have the best experience of the life that they have created for themselves despite some of the choices that they've made. Many of us are there. That's where I am with my country right now. I am so disappointed in the demonstration of how we are standing up in the world and thinking about this whole idea of the International Day of Peace. It wasn't long ago that they were looking to us to say, show us what that might look like. And right now they're going, never mind. Never mind. Because to you, 54 mass shootings in 1 year. Assassinations of someone who you don't agree with is the norm. Now, I'm preaching to the choir, not just the ensemble. We all know that that's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always been. That's the history that we've not been willing to talk about or share about or break into a deep discussion of how did America get to be the way that it is. And if you haven't had an opportunity to watch it, it's on PBS, and you can do however you do PBS these days to downstream or find it on one of the alternative stations that they offer. But the Thurgood Marshall documentary was enlightening and informative. And I had no idea. I had no idea because I wasn't taught. You know, the 3 lines that he may have been honored with in my history book didn't tell the full story. I had no idea that he tried nearly 60 cases before the Supreme Court. Didn't win many of them, but every case planted a seed and a step to the next thing. And he was building a history of being able to come back to folks to say, well, now, remember when you said this applies here? And that's how he got to be as respected and revered as he is. And it was like, okay, what can we take away from that lesson for a time like this? For a time like this, okay? Certainly one of the things that I have been working on in the writings and the podcasts and the things that I've been doing, this idea of when we see something, we must say something. We must ask Spirit if there is something for us to do in this moment. And then we must listen. We, above all else in our society, and I know it's no one in this room, but for the most part, we've stopped listening. We've stopped seeking to understand how someone might have the point of view that they have. And it's like I've been so aware of that these past months. And one of the things that I am always amazed about one's hero's journey is, when they go back home. And for the last 4 years, I have been blessed to be having a home in the hometown that I grew up in, of Winchester, Indiana. I call it my writer's college. When I get there, I am just, it's coming through. I just can't save it or edit it, but it's coming through. So I'm getting the support I need to make that happen. But one of the things that I'm doing is that I'm talking to people that I otherwise have not seen in over 50 years. And one of my favorite experiences as a kid growing up in Winchester and kind of being proud of my little hometown is our annual fall festival. Now, if you saw Still Magnolias or Mayberry RFD, that's Winchester. But as a kid, the Autumn Festival was named the Mardi Gras. Now, nobody corrected them to let them know what Mardi Gras meant. But they still called it that. But it was a time that they celebrated diversity. And why? Because their economy was dependent upon the immigrant workers that would come in to pick the tomatoes, pick the zucchinis, pick the corn, pick the pumpkins, pick the harvest that was available. And there was such a reverence and celebration of this cultural happening that fall festival was the first place as a 5-year-old that I ever tasted a taco. That I ever knew what an enchilada was, that I ever saw a sombrero, that I ever experienced a culture. And those folks were lifted up and celebrated and thanked. The high school marching band that marched in the parade was always playing Mexican music. I went to school with the Nunezes and the Perezes and the Lopezes. And they were a part of it. And that festival celebrated that cultural diversity. And people knew that it was there. Now, one of the things that I noticed as a little kid is there'd be these old men sitting on the park bench around the courthouse square, just watching stuff happen, listening to the music, commenting, talking to people, like a lot of people do in the malls and later generations. You see those men sitting in the middle holding court, just talking. That was kind of the experience, and I thought, those old guys, it's just too bad they don't have a life. But anyway, I noticed that as a kid, and one of the things that I realized last fall. Now, at this festival, my experience was, imagine a courthouse square, all four sides. It was the farmer's market extraordinaire. Everything that had been grown was there. On another side was all the food trucks, all the different flavors of the season were there. Then there were the bake sales with the peach cobblers and the cherry pies and the strawberry rhubarb pies and all that on the other side. And then on the offshoots of the thing was the Ferris wheel and the merry-go-round and the carnival. So last year, I couldn't wait to go. Couldn't wait to go because it's like I wanted to rekindle that experience. And I went. There's no parade anymore. And the festival only took up two sides of the courthouse square. And it was mostly folks from the different faith-based organizations having their bake sale and their pie sale and that sort of thing, but there were no zucchinis or tomatoes or corn or any of that for people to buy. And I thought, what happened? And I went over and I sat down on the bench and had that thought, oh my God, I've become that old man on this bench. So I talked to another old man on the bench and said, what happened? And he said, well, things shifted. I said, why aren't there tomatoes? Why aren't there corn? Why aren't there zucchini? Well, we don't grow that anymore. Well, what do you grow now? Well, we grow soybeans. Oh, okay. Now, when I was that little kid looking at the older man on the park bench, soybeans was what some farmers raised in order to feed their livestock. And that was it. And oftentimes what farmers did at that time is they would rotate the crops. And so you might have corn one year, but the next year you would have soybeans, so it would put the right nutrients in the ground, and then this following year you'd grow corn again. So soybeans was never the it crop. And I said, well, how did that come to be? China. Excuse me? China. China? Yeah, China. China, they buy all of our soybeans. So you're raising soybeans to sell to China. How well's that going this year? Well, China's not buying any soybeans this year. Oh, are you going to be okay? Is that, Oh, sure. We'll be fine because we get that subsidy. That's subsidy. Tell me a little bit more about that subsidy. Well, see, if China doesn't buy the soybeans, the government will give us a check in order not to grow any soybeans next year. Oh, so kind of like welfare. Oh, no. And it's not that at all. That's for those people. Where's the check come from? Who writes the check? Well, I said, same people that write the check for food stamps. So you're being subsidized. How's that working out? Well, it's working out fine. How are you defining fine? Well, gas is 5 cents a gallon cheaper than it was last year. Biden really raised those taxes on that gasoline. Now, I'm in my mind immediately wanting to book my ticket back to California. But what it was teaching me, we must first seek to understand how the world got to be the way that it is. And one of the things that I'm discovering, and I'm almost saying I'm too damn old to be discovering this now. I wish I would have noticed when I was 40 or 50, how much they depend on us being ignorant. Ignorance. Now, what I learned in the last years, the difference between being ignorant and stupid. And what I really don't want to be is stupid about all this. But I am okay with being ignorant, because if you're ignorant, that means you can learn. You just don't know yet. But once you know better, you do better. If you're stupid, you're just not going to get it. So I think there is a lot of stupidity going on at some level, but more not, there's a lot of ignorance going on. And the only way that we can eradicate the ignorance is to listen and to seek to understand, how did you come to that thinking? How did you get there? How are you putting that together? You know, and if we don't do that, we are never going to create this world that works for all. We are never going to understand that when we say we must come together for the hard conversations, the first thing that we cannot do is tell the other person how they should be perceiving it, living it, or doing it. We must first go with the understanding, tell me how you think we got here. We've got to do that with spirituality. And it's like, sometimes I just get so frustrated that I am 72 years of age, because there are some things that I would love to be 40 and taken on right now, especially in the discourse of faith-based organizations. When somebody comes out and says, we really need to eliminate empathy from our understanding of how we treat one another. Now I know why somebody would say that, because I need you to be ignorant. So I don't want you to have any compassion for people in Palestine. I don't want you to have any compassion or understanding of the fear that somebody in Poland is facing today. No, those drones didn't accidentally just fly over. They didn't go off course. That's ignorant thinking. We got to figure out what it's about. And it's like one of the things that I fear is I don't have enough time to figure out everything that I need to figure out. So all I can do now is to empower somebody else to go and figure it out. And to take that look. Again, especially in our faith-based organizations. Now, I always loved being the minister that stirred some stuff up and made people think. And you may have heard this story before, but I loved it. The very first, it wasn't the International Day of Peace, it was the International Day of Prayer. And I was the newest minister in Tracy, California. And let's give the new person a task, the job that nobody wants to do. Really kind of get their stuff, see what they're made out of. So, Reverend Jack, we do this multicultural day of prayer, and we need you to chair it. Would you do that? Of course I will. I'm a theatrical producer. I can pull some stuff together. And I did. So I went to the synagogue and asked the rabbi if he would be a part of it. I asked the Muslim leader, the cleric, to ask if he would be a part of it. I went to the Methodist church. I went to the Presbyterian church. I went to the Disciples of Christ church. I went to the Catholic church. I got everybody to come together for this multicultural day of prayer, only to understand that they really meant only Christians. They had never, ever invited anyone else. And I went and had a conversation with my dear friend Evelyn Tolbert, who was one of the first African-American city council workers in the city of Tracy, and I was telling her my story, and she goes, "Bless your heart." And she says, "Let me tell you about our multicultural ethnic festival," when they were surprised that there were black folks there. And yeah, okay. So then I even had the audacity. All these folks came together in Lincoln Park, and they all offered their idea of what they offered as prayer. And my intention was to show that the one thing that we have in common across all things is prayer. And so everybody got to hear everybody pray. And they got to notice for the first time, oh. And of course, there was music. I had my equivalent of the ensemble of the day behind me. And I had the best musicians playing. And the last song that we sang was a song that's very traditional in many centers for spiritual living across the country. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. I can tell you now, the letters to the editor of the newspaper would have made you shake in your boots. That blasphemous minister had the audacity to sing a song about let there be peace on earth, knowing that the end times teach there will never be peace on earth. My message was blasphemous. And they even wrote, and we suspect that one of the musicians seemed to be a homosexual. Now, I would love to tell you that this was 1960, 1970, 1980, 1990, but this was 2006 when this was happening. So I kind of adopted the attitude, okay, I see why I'm here now. Bring it. I was a part of the Tracy Ministerial Association. Now, the Tracy Ministerial Association, on paper, was an amazing organization of how things should be. Instead of each church trying to feed the hungry, they came together as an association so that every church gave a little. But because every church gave a little, they could feed a lot. And so they were feeding over 4,000 people a month in the food shelter. And everyone gave a little, gave a little, gave a little. In fact, there were 24 different faith-based organizations, a part of the Ministerial Association, that brought this food bank together. I was aligned with them because they were fulfilling the principles of Matthew 25. You were hungry, and I fed you. You were unclothed, and I clothed you, because they also had this tremendous clothing bank where folks could come and get clothes and whatever they needed. They created a voucher program so that if somebody came to any church and said, I'm hungry, I don't have anything to eat, they could pull out and hand them vouchers. They didn't have to give them cash. They had vouchers from McDonald's and Wendy's and Taco Bell's and stuff so that the person could get something to eat. If it was a woman needing shelter or who might have had children, they had vouchers that they could pull out to give to her so that she could get into one of the motels in the city to have a safe place to be at night. They had done it pretty well. Now, they did not include anyone of Jewish faith, any Muslims. It was pretty much a Christian-based organization. So following the day of prayer, I go to the next Wednesday meeting, which is a luncheon. There's 24 of us there, and nobody's eating. Everybody usually brought their little brown bag lunch, kind of thing, but no one was eating. And I just kind of noticed that, so I kind of kept my little lunch bag closed, and one of the ministers raised their hand to make a motion and said, I would like to make a motion that we evict Reverend Jack Elliott from this organization. In fact, we can no longer eat with him in our presence because it would be a sin to break bread with him. And Spirit whispered to me, say nothing. Say nothing. Just let them talk. Of course, there was a person there, a reporter from the newspaper at the meeting, and so they voted to excommunicate me. 24 people, 12 to 12. Tied. And so they turned and looked at me and said, now, we know that you intend to live a good life, so you are respectfully going to resign, aren't you, and just step away, because after all, you are blasphemous in this philosophy that you believe in and what you are bringing to the community. And I said nothing. And then so they tried to call another vote, and every time they voted 4 or 5 times, 12 to 12. And finally, this delightful woman who was the chair, who was the chaplain at Tracy Memorial Hospital, said, well, gentlemen, I have to say that if you're going to vote to excommunicate Reverend Jack, you're going to also have to excommunicate me because I'm a lesbian. And of course they went, oh, no. If you hadn't said anything, we wouldn't have had to address this. And so it's still tied. Now, again, I'm saying nothing. So they decided the only thing that they could do as forthright fundamentalist Christians was to vote to disband. They were willing to put in jeopardy this renowned food program, clothing program, voucher program, in order to be right about getting rid of Rebecca and I on principle. I said nothing, and they voted to disband. Now, I got a wink and a nod from my mentor, Reverend Mike McClellan, who was the minister at the Presbyterian Church, and that meant he had a plan. And what I knew is that the 14 that voted for me to say, immediately planned to carry on the work and to keep it organized. But the story that came out in the press, the reporters went to them and said, well, what did Reverend Jack say? Nothing. Oh, so you all did this to yourselves. You all chose to do that. He wasn't, quite frankly, I think one of the reporters said this to me, it wasn't in print, but she goes, all he wanted to do was have his peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But yet you chose to do what you did. That's who we are dealing with, and I know that I don't have to tell anybody in this room that. We must take action. And I know some of us want to say, white people, you need to go figure this one out on your own. And I get it. I get it. But you have something to offer those that are saying, okay, let me go do this thing. I think I have enough gas for one more trip. I have enough gas to piss off just a few more people, and I'll do it. Because I do believe in justice. I do believe that justice is the demonstration of love in the community. That's what love looks like, is justice. I love supporting people. I mean, Miss Damali, she's putting some word out there on TikTok. She is holding folks accountable and giving them ideas of what to do. She's even bringing that right back home to us right here within the Centers for Spiritual Living, because our own Imagining Justice folks are championing an idea with a letter that is going to CSL home office to say, come on now. Just because you have the Reverend Dr. Andriette Worrell does not mean that you are complete in your effort to be the demonstration of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Just because you have the precious and honorable Tracy Brown, Dr. Tracy Brown, practitioner extraordinaire, does not mean that your work for diversity, inclusion, equity, and inclusion is done. You must be the continual demonstration of it. Wake up. We all can say something. We all can do something. And above all else, we can listen when required. It's what we are called to do for a time like this. It is absolutely the message that we want to be sending over to the next room. Fight the good fight. Get into good trouble. It's what we're called to do. People are looking to us right now to see how we are traversing this week that we've just gone through. We are not wailing and moaning and begging Jesus to help us out of this one, as is happening in many churches across America right now. We are not pretending that we are not accountable, even though we may have not been responsible for what's happening. But our complacency in not writing a letter, our complacency in not seeking first to understand, is what is contributing to the world that we're living in right now. We know, those of us that have lived a while know, that we will transcend even this. And that's our message. For many people, this is the first time they're experiencing something like this. But if they'd read any history, they would have known this is not the first time we've had to transcend something like this. And what didn't we put into place? One of the things that Thurgood Marshall offers in this documentary is everything was about winning the case against Brown versus the Board of Education, but they didn't have a plan for what happened next. Nobody thought of what happens if we win. We can fight the good fight, but what happens if we win? Roe versus Wade. We fought the good fight, but what happens if we win? What did we put in place so that we would never have to address this again? Marriage equality. What happens if we win? How can we assure it cannot be rewritten, reinterpreted, taken away? What's the plan? We are great in our faith, our philosophy, and way of living for imagining a world that works for all. What happens if we get it? How will we be doing that? That's what we have to understand. That's the final chapter that we have to write. What is ours to do once we win? Once we have the thing? We know how to get the thing. What are we going to do with it once we have it? What are we going to do with it so it doesn't depreciate? Like that new car we wanted to have in 2015 that we worked so hard for. We put that car on our vision board. We put that car in our mind. We could see ourselves driving it down the road, how it was going to be. Now we can't even insure the thing. It depreciated. How can we make sure and solidify that all the work we're doing around diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't depreciate? What crumbs can we leave? What insights can we leave for the generations that follow us to go, okay, we got it this far. We got it this far. You got to take it the rest of the way. You got to use your intelligence, your creativity, your ingenuity. Here, take it. Run with it. Do something with it. We got you this far. That's what I think that is the discernment that we are called to do in a time like this. How can we start imagining what's going to happen on the other side once even this storm has passed? Because this storm will pass. There's not enough wind in it. There's not enough rage in it for it to last. So, if we truly are going to see what's on the other side, what's the plan? What are we going to do with that? How are we going to make that happen? How are we going to use these principles of this faith, this philosophy, this way of living that we are saying, I'm all in for that. I'm right there for that. How are we going to hold Centers for Spiritual Living accountable? How are we going to hold Heart and Soul Center of Light accountable? How are we going to hold Elder Pride accountable? How are we going to hold anybody who says they want it to be a certain way, but as soon as we get it, our work is not done, our work has just begun? And that's the lesson from the past, is that we have to have a plan for victory. a plan for absolutely making it happen. So as the ensemble comes back up to get ready for the next song that they're going to do for you, I want to leave you with this idea that now is the time to envision a world that works for everyone. Everyone. We are individualized expression of one spirit divine. And we got to act like it. We cannot allow anyone to diminish our voice. And we have to understand that while peace is an inside job, peace also requires some outside momentum and action in order to bring it home. And that is what we are called to do today, to be the demonstration that peace is possible and that peace is the antidote for a world that works for all. Thank you very much. Ensemble, are you ready for my, where do I stand?
Right there.
Okay, I'll stand over here, out of the way.
I am all of God. God is all I am. God is all I am. I'm letting go. I'm letting go. Now for sure. Now for sure. God's got it. Come on, God's got it. God's got it. That means that we're talking about us. God's got it.